Let's bring in Nile Gardiner, who is a former advisor to Margaret Thatcher. Nile, it's great to have you with us this morning. The First Lady and the President were treated to quite the spectacle yesterday. I know you were following it very closely. So before we dive into today's events, look back at what transpired yesterday between our two nations and what stood out to you the most.
Well, many thanks for having me on the show today. And I was in Windsor yesterday, and it was a truly spectacular day of events and ceremony. I think the most elaborate state visit, frankly, in many decades here in the United Kingdom, and a huge celebration of the US-UK special relationship. A recognition, of course, the fact that President Trump is the leader of the free world. And I do think the President greatly enjoyed all of the ceremony events that took place at Windsor. It was a truly magnificent day in so many respects, and a demonstration also of Great Britain at its very best. And the British monarchy, hugely important, I think, for unifying the British people. Hugely important also in terms of representing the British people on the world stage. And I thought yesterday's ceremonies were absolutely superbly managed and run. And also a great partnership that we're seeing between President Trump and King Charles as well.
Niall, to borrow from my colleague Carly's phrase, I'm going to dive into the business now, because that is what today is all about, and that ultimately is what is important, more so than the pomp and circumstance of yesterday. So what do you expect each side to try and get out of today's meeting? What deliverables do you expect? Looking at AI, tariffs, steel, aluminum tariffs specifically. What say you, Niall?
Yeah, I think the talks today will be dominated by a number of key issues. Primarily, I think trade, commerce will be top of the agenda, but also, of course, developments in the Middle East, the war in Ukraine. And also, I think the President will be focused on issues of defense spending in Europe. He had a very successful NATO summit at The Hague a few months ago. He'll be pressing European nations, including the UK, to deliver upon the promises made at The Hague NATO summit. There'll be a lot of discussion about very large levels of US investment in the United Kingdom, especially in the AI field. And I think the President will be making a number of announcements on that front today, and also, of course, strengthening a US-UK trade agreement. There will be some significant tensions, I think, in some areas, especially over developments in the Middle East. After all, the British government's recent declaration of support for a Palestinian state is very unwelcome in Washington. In my view, that's a disastrous move, and I do think the President will strongly oppose that. We'll also see potentially the President raising the issue of free speech in the UK. And in the UK under Keir Starmer, several thousand people have been arrested for social media comments. And I do think that there are huge concerns in the United States over free speech in the UK. After all, this is a very left-wing government under Keir Starmer. It's also extremely unpopular, with an approval rating for the Prime Minister around 15 to 20%. And so there's a huge difference between President Trump, who's a very strong leader, and Keir Starmer, who the British people view as extraordinarily weak-kneed in many respects. So two very different personalities and characters. And I do think that President Trump will be very strongly representing US interests, of course, here in the United Kingdom, but also on the European stage.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And there is going to be a press conference later today where some of those differences can come to light, because they'll be answering individual questions. And obviously, the President does not agree with Keir Starmer and the UK Parliament over their decision to potentially recognize a Palestinian state. And the issue of free speech is no doubt going to come up after the assassination of Charlie Kirk here in the United States. Their relationship, Niall, you just hit on it, is very interesting, because politically, these two men couldn't be further apart. Keir Starmer is somebody who would agree more with Bernie Sanders here in the United States than Donald Trump. But despite that, they do have what appears to be a very good working relationship, with President Trump once saying that they get along famously. So how does that happen?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do think Keir Starmer has been very careful in terms of his relationship with the United States. And this is one area, I think, where Keir Starmer has gone to great lengths to advance the US-UK special relationship, despite the fact that Keir Starmer overall, and I think he's been actually a disastrous Prime Minister here in Great Britain. But in this area of building relations with the United States, he has been very, very careful, and he has also worked in advancing a US-UK trade agreement. We've already seen that agreement put in place in its early stages earlier this year. But at the same time, I think Keir Starmer is in real trouble. He may not even last another year as Prime Minister. In fact, there are moves afoot within the ruling Labour Party to oust Keir Starmer. So we could see a coup within the Labour Party and Starmer removed as PM in the next few months or so. So this is going to be a very interesting meeting. But as I mentioned earlier, I mean, Keir Starmer is a hugely unpopular figure in Britain. In fact, he's the most unpopular Prime Minister, I think, of modern times in the United Kingdom. He's fighting for his survival. And in contrast, President Trump is riding very high. He is somebody who dominates the world stage. And there's just a massive contrast between the two figures.
Yeah, that's right. Nigel Farage was on with Stuart Varney on Fox Business yesterday, said that his party is up 10 to 15 points in the polls right now, and attributes it to the economy and immigration, which is something that people here in the U.S. can very much relate to when it comes to the differences between somebody like Joe Biden and President Trump. So politically, we could be seeing some parallels between the United States and the UK in the months ahead. Former Margaret Thatcher advisor Nile Gardiner, thank you for joining us this morning.
My pleasure. Many thanks.
White House Deputy Press Secretary Anna Kelly. Anna, thanks for being here. We've touched on a lot of topics thus far in our first 37 minutes. One we have not talked about. It is expected that Keir Starmer, Prime Minister there in England, will recognize a Palestinian state this upcoming weekend. Do you think your boss, Donald Trump, can convince him to do otherwise?
Well, look, the president addressed this. Of course, the president doesn't agree with some of the countries around the world that are recognizing the Palestinian state. He doesn't think it is helpful to the ongoing negotiations. Remember, this president has prioritized getting all of the hostages home and also the remains of hostages that are tragically still trapped in Gaza. He wants those families of those victims to be able to have those remains tragically. And so that is this president's priority. He alluded to this a little bit a month ago, that he doesn't necessarily agree with countries that are doing this, so it certainly could come up. But the priority really for this visit is all of these economic investments that this president is negotiating as our deal maker in chief. We're set to see a number of deals touching on technology, defense, other areas, nuclear energy, that are going to be really mutually beneficial for both the United States and the United Kingdom. So I imagine there'll be a number of topics that come up, but this president, I know, is very excited to enhance some of our really strong economic ties that we already have between our two countries.
Well, we have been discussing it all morning long and yesterday as well. President Trump is the first president in modern history to receive a second state visit invitation from the UK. Why do you think it is President Trump to have received this honor?
Yeah, I think Martha did a great job explaining really well the personal ties between our two countries. Of course, the president's own family ties with his mother hailing from Scotland. And again, our two countries are ones that have tremendous economic ties already. There are $1.7 trillion right now in joint economic ties between the United States and the United Kingdom. The president, of course, also has great relationships with Prime Minister Starmer, with King Charles. King Charles gave that really touching speech last night mentioning this as well. And so he's able to lean on those relationships to get better deals for our country. And that's a lot of what I think you'll see today. Yesterday was about the pomp and circumstance and the pageantry and the special relationship between our two countries. Today we talk business, and that's what you're going to see when we talk about these really historic deals that are going to expand collaboration on all of these areas and also bring jobs and investment back to our country.
And on the right-hand side of your screen, you are seeing the First Lady and Queen Camila there, still at Windsor.
Yeah.
They did not make the trip that Donald Trump made. Queen Camila and Melania staying behind. And they are reviewing some items there in the beautiful Windsor Castle. But one item I want to address with you, and you sort of alluded to it, but I want to drill you down to a specific here. We obviously have the framework of an agreement for a negotiation with regard to the tariffs, but ultimately a trade deal is incomplete. Do you think these two leaders ultimately take that next step and make those commitments a formal reality, Anna?
I'm sure it'll be discussed, of course, as you kind of alluded to. Trade is a huge priority for President Trump. And as I discussed earlier, we had that historic trade deal that was discussed previously that really expanded markets for American industries, namely our farmers and cattlemen, who are absolutely thrilled to have this trade deal. And so I'm sure trade is something that'll come up again as it ties into all of our strong economic relationships that we have with the United Kingdom. Again, $1.7 trillion in investment. The U.S. is the top economic partner for the United Kingdom, and so I am sure that'll come up on both fronts as the president continues to work to negotiate fair trade for American farmers, workers, all industries.
That's right. And like Todd said, we're seeing the First Lady is very busy as well. She's holding an event with Queen Camila at Windsor Castle. And then later today on the scheduling front, she's going to be meeting with the Princess of Wales, Princess Kate, at Frogmore Garden. White House Deputy Press Secretary Anna Kelly, thank you for joining us.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.